So I can start with a topic I know that's been on my mind a lot, and I've spoken with a few colleagues about it. But we work with fraternities and sororities, which are not only values-based organizations, but organizations that are founded in service and philanthropy. And right now, I know my campus is really struggling with balancing how our associated students is able to do certain events that our student organizations aren't, because our ASI is incorporated. And how are we saying, no, you can't do a beach cleanup that's outside and, where you're wearing masks, because that's a campus event. I'm curious if others are facing that. I see some nodding heads, or maybe how you have balanced that with your students.
Monica, I'm also curious on that topic of how many of our departments are under ASI and how many are under not, I guess.
I think on that end as well as Monica, Julie, and Ro, who I just saw join us as well. We're all, and I don't know if I'm missing any of our other CSU people on here, but we have to follow the affiliate organizations, Industries of Higher Education packet that came from the California Department of Public Health. And so that's saying that affiliate organizations are not allowed to have any in-person events. And so my students are very much upset, similar to that, why is AS able to be on campus and take photo shoots, and we can't even do a composite in person and do events, etc. And so, and I think that there's kind of an equity component on that end, because AS is not a student org, even though it's made up of students that represent the larger student body. So it's challenging on our campus as well. But to go off of Julie's question, Fraternity and Sorority Life is underneath Student Life and Leadership, which is not, we're physically located underneath AS and the student union. They're on the third floor, we're on the second floor, they're upstairs neighbors, but we do not fall underneath them as far as governance or anything like that.
I'm curious where everyone is from in the room too.
I didn't know if I would be that. Oh, go for it, William.
So I just want to kind of go back to the original question. I'm William from Norfolk State University. So the question that you were asking is how are organizations allowed to do certain things off campus, or how are we dealing with it at our institution, basically? Okay. So with us, we're not allowing any student organizations to have any in-person events right now, even though they're on campus. So everything has to be done virtually. And that's the university policy through the conduct office. So if they're caught doing it, they can possibly be sent home. So it is a struggle for our service-based organizations because they have to do service. So if you are out doing service on your own, it's kind of that's just you out. But as an organization, we're not allowing students to go out and do service projects and things as an organization for safety. And of course, we do regular testing and stuff like that on campus for those students. But as an organization, as organizations, we're not allowing it.
Did you say you offer testing for some of your organizations?
Yeah, so on our campus, every student has to be tested upon arrival for COVID. And then we do random rapid tests. So you may get a random email and say, hey, you have to come in to be tested on this day. And then you do your random test. So the first test we had was the one to take 2 to 3 days to come back. But now we have the rapid test. So we typically do about 200 students a day, but we're going to up it to 5. So you just may get a random email and say, hey, you got to come in and get tested. So on our campus, we're really, really strict on our students as far as the COVID guidelines and following the guidelines. So right now, the only offices that are able to have in-person events are student activities and housing, but they're very limited to who can attend. But we will co-sponsor the event with the student organization or Greek-like organization so they can come and people can come and still support them so they can still show that they're doing stuff for their national organizations.
I'm realizing that I'm so used to being in a bubble of people on the West Coast where we're stay at home, you can't go to the grocery store. maybe in the chat, if y'all can share, like, if you have students on campus. I mean, I know for us, we have like 0.1% of classes on campus right now, but if you have like a normal amount of students, because I just realized, yeah, like to me, I was like, you test your students every day, but that makes sense because some classes are still going on.
Yeah, I know we have a normal amount. We have about 3,000 plus students on campus. So we're fully functioning. A lot of our students stay home, but yeah, we're fully functioning. So it's very different, but it's the norm. But I will say with our COVID numbers, we did really, really well from August until they went home for Thanksgiving. We probably had maybe like 30 cases. So compared to other universities, we were really strict. So that was good in a sense. So they followed the rules, thank God.
That is fascinating. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can add to that a little bit too. My name's Evan. I work at Fairmont State University in West Virginia. It's a small rural institution, but we have about 3,000 students on campus as well. And from the spring, the university has really been pushing for that in-person, high-touch type offering is what they are kind of phrasing it as. But they've been really pushing for in-person stuff. So we have all the students on campus. We have them attending classes. They are still live streamed, which has caused a lot of struggle for some students. We also started out allowing our student orgs to meet in person, but then when there were a couple of organization members that ended up with COVID cases, that ended up being nixed. But we're still doing, my office also, I oversee all the campus programming. So we're still offering programs and we're still having them go to class in person. And so the student orgs are like, if you can do all that in person on campus, then why can't we meet? And so I have been, like William mentioned, I've been telling them I'm willing to partner with you to make sure that we are following the guidelines. We instituted some in-person guidelines for all of them to follow. And I can help them work through that process, co-sponsor something. The service component has really been lacking on our campus because no one on campus that works here is really in charge of that or doing it right now. So I kind of had to step in and fill that gap. And I've been working with the All Greek Council this semester on doing some campus cleanups where they clean up the parking garage and around campus. We also had a big donation drive for our on-campus food bank that our Greeks supplied most of the donations for. And so we've been able to do those smaller events just for something for them to still stay engaged and active on our campus.
Where does it come? Who pays for all this testing? I'm curious.
In West Virginia, the state has offered testing. So the state covered the cost of testing everyone to move onto campus. And then we've also been doing surveillance testing for, I think we have to test like 3 to 10% of our population each week. And it's a symptomatic saliva test that's been provided to us by the state.
Okay, cool, thank you.
On my campus, we had a fun chat about the term surveillance testing. And we ended up, I don't remember, I won't even lie, I don't remember what we changed it to. I think it was just like random testing, but telling our community of fraternities and sororities, you are an at-risk population and you are getting surveillance testing, were a lot of those words that normally end up with students just yelling at me over Zoom. So anytime I hear it, the first thing I think is like, oh, surveillance.
So my question for whoever wants to jump in, we are doing intake in the spring semester for our Greek letter organizations. So right now we're saying that everyone has to be virtual, but I just want to know, how's that working on you guys' campuses as far as intake? Are you allowing organizations to have intake in the spring or throughout the academic school year? Are there different regulations in place? I just want to kind of see how other universities or colleges are working.
I think it's probably going to totally depend on where we are. I think it's clear a lot of, our West Coast people, everything is virtual, there's no in person. So at least for Stanislaus State, as long as they're virtual, they're able to kind of do what they can. But I think it is for at least for some of our organizations, it's have they been able to recruit enough to have an intake? So I think it's going to differ, but maybe for those who are actually in person or might have some other input.
Hi, I can share a little bit. My name is Paul Fronte. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Engagement at New York Institute of Technology. So we have a really small fraternity and sorority life community here, but we follow whatever New York Tech implements. So we started the fall semester with a hybrid model. So intake would kind of follow that as a hybrid model, hoping that they would really go for virtual, which they did. A lot of my organizations completely did virtual recruitment and virtual intake, which was surprising and great to see. Next semester will definitely look a bit different because we are totally remote until March or mid-March, which is like middle intake time. So we're going to be pushing it completely virtual for the spring semester.
At Fairmont State, we did kind of a hybrid. We allowed orgs to table on campus, which is their primary outreach method. Whether or not that's actually effective is a whole nother conversation. But that's what they like to do is they table. But then a lot of our organizations, especially the sororities, didn't feel comfortable holding in-person events, even though we did allow some small events. So they mostly did like virtual game nights or virtual meet and greets, virtual hangouts. But our numbers for recruitment or intake were very, very low this year. So if anyone has any ideas of something that has been successful to outreach to more students, then I'd love to hear it.
Are your organizations using Engage to recruit? Like, are they, I don't know how many are on Engage, or, you know, and that can be a whole nother conversation. But as far as recruitment, are they using that, or like, how are they recruiting if they've been successful?
I can jump in. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby. I'm the Greek advisor at San Francisco State University. So we're generally a commuter school. Well, obviously commuting right now because it's virtual. But as far as recruitment and intake, some things that we saw worked and some things that were just a flop. So we just started using Engage in January. So we launched it right before COVID, and then COVID happened. We had OrgSync before, and everyone freaked out because they didn't know how to use it, of course. But we did virtual tabling through Engage. I personally didn't like it. I think I don't think we had enough of traction for students to come, especially first years. And I feel like this semester was just way too overwhelming for all of our transfers and first year students. It was just throwing a lot of information at them. And the first year experience orientation team did like 8 weeks of events, which was just way too much. So we didn't have a really big turnout. But for our Greeks, what they turned to was social media. So they would follow like the class of 24 pages, and that's mainly how they outreached. We did have a few orgs do intake. The orgs that did were our smaller orgs, so like our Latinx orgs or multicultural. Our D9 didn't do intake, and our Panhellenics and IFC frats didn't do intake either. So for the spring, I'm foreseeing more, but social media was definitely the biggest thing that they used to recruit people.
Yeah.
And my question, so tabling, is that more like informational? I know everyone uses different language depending on. Okay, so we call it Meet the Greeks here. So we call it Meet the Greeks. So we did it virtually on Zoom this year, and we used the webinar platform. So typically at Meet the Greeks, we can have anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 students show up, because then like everybody wants to be Greek, because we have about We have like 15 organizations on campus. But this year, the Zoom platform, we had between 3 and 4. And at our mandatory hazing seminar, we can have, like I said, 1,000+ people, because you have to attend the seminar to go to join the organization. So the virtual Meet the Greeks was very different, but it kind of worked in the sense we used like I said, we use a Zoom platform. We've been using Zoom a lot with students, and then going live on Facebook through the Zoom platform has kind of helped a little bit. But like I said, it's very, very different. So it's not the outcome that we're used to. But we've had them, and it kind of worked a little bit, but yeah, different.
William, you said people or students who want to go Greek have to attend like a informational first. How do you like keep track of that? And
Okay, so before COVID, we have an informational session for those who are interested in joining. It's a mandatory anti-hazing seminar. So we have one for Greek members who are in a Greek-led organization already, as well as our band and cheerleaders. So what we do is you have to check in, you have to swipe your student ID to come in. You have to take a pre-test, then you go through the information, and then you take the post-test. Which before COVID was all done pencil and paper. So you had to bring your own pencil and paper. So we have papers everywhere. And then we had to go back and search through it when it was time for a selection process to find your name. Now that we switched over to COVID and everything is virtual, I use Google Doc to create a sign-in sheet, as well as the pre-test and post-tests on Google. So now it's easier for me to see who attended, because I can just type your name in and see if you signed in on one of the links. And then, like, say I open the pre-test for like 15 minutes, and then I lock it so no one else can send it to their friends, and they can kind of say I came. And then you have to pre-register for the Zooms ahead of time, so I can see who actually registered and stuff. So now it's kind of easy to kind of like figure out who came and who didn't. So we use that. And before, like I said, we use our student ID. So with that, they had to swipe their card in, and they had to swipe out when you leave. So we had a lot of different ways to kind of see who actually came. So if your name pops up on at least one of them, we're like, okay, you're on at least one of the lists. We have like 8 different lists that we can choose from. So if you're on at least one of the lists, we know that you were there. So that's why we do it that way, to kind of see who attended.
Nice. When you say swipe, are you using like an event check-in app process pass?
Yeah. So we have what we call it our Spartan card. So we go through our Spartan card office, and we set up for, like, say our Greek meeting, we'll let them know, hey, we're having a Greek meeting on this day, and they may name it Event 1, and we're the only people who can use it. So when they swipe their card, everyone's name will come under Event 1. And we use, typically our swipers are connected to our iPods that we use in our office, so it's all connected, so we don't have to go around with like a big machine and they like swipe it. It's kind of, and now that everything is virtual or updated, they can just tap their card on the thing. Now we can kind of see who's checked in, so it makes things a lot easier.
Super helpful. Thank you so much.
I have one more follow-up. Do you find the need to have to like cross-reference rosters afterwards, like to make sure that students aren't actually joining organizations and being added to rosters without having gone to your program or pre-recruitment program prior to?
Yeah, so the way that the process works is, say that you're interested in joining a Greek organization, you go to the interest meeting, they submit your name. Every name that's submitted to us, we pull like their transcripts to make sure they meet the university requirements as far as GPA, no judicial sanctions, and then we also check the list to make sure that they attended the meeting. So if any of those flags come up, you won't even be considered for membership. We send it back to the advisor, and we show all the list of names, and we say approve or not approve, and then we tell why. So you can't really sneak in because we monitor it. So it's really hard to kind of like sneak into an organization. And I mean, we've had instances where people have been initiated that were not approved. So then once we find out, the organization is then reviewed for investigation and possibly could be suspended for a certain amount of time because their advisor didn't follow the instructions. And that typically can be a semester or a year, depending on how bad it is and how many people it could go on. So we're really strict on our Greek organizations, but we have to be just because of different hazing incidents that have happened either at other institutions or close to us. So we're really, really strict on them.
Thanks for that. I think the advisor piece and the checking in maybe through nationals is the piece that is totally missing for sure. Thanks.
I think that also leads to just how much advisors of Greek organizations are different than other organizations. And that's the piece that I think some in my department don't really understand.
When it, from at least at Long Beach, I'll just put it on ourselves. We face that a lot between the difference with our, let's say our Panhellenic advisors, and then our NPHC advisors or grad chapter when it came to intake. So I had an NPHC chapter that was like, yeah, like we're ready to do intake. We figured out virtual, we have ideas. We just need to meet with our grad advisor tonight, and then we'll send you the info. And their sweet grad advisor decided she didn't think that was a great idea. So they weren't able to intake, which is totally fair. Like that's an advisor's job, is to look out for their chapter and, you know, if they believe like what's in the best interest. But I don't know if others have had that, but that's definitely something that I have faced, I'll say mostly with our CBFOs, our culturally based org. So our, for us, it's our Cultural Great Council and then our NPHC Council, just that they rely a little bit more heavily on that like needing of approval from a grad chapter or a grad advisor to begin a membership intake process. And so like, it's like chapters are excited, chapters understand Zoom, chapters think, you know, like have a plan in mind, but maybe grad advisor or grad chapter doesn't feel like Zoom is the right place for an MIP to take place or things like that. So I don't know if I'm just living the struggle life over here or if others have faced similar problems.
I don't think you're dealing with the struggle life. With NPHC organizations, they kind of rely mostly on their graduate chapter. So here, how we do it is the faculty advisor has the final say. We hold them to a high standard, like you're the faculty advisor. Sometimes they do reach out to the graduate chapter and say, hey, how, you know, we have to get approval from like regionals and stuff like that, we understand. But we really hold the faculty advisor to a high standard. And in this area, typically the graduate chapter consists of people who are older, who are not really technology savvy. So they always say no to new things because it's not how it's always been done, or they don't understand how to use Zoom. So, I mean, we've offered like, hey, we can show you how this works. Like, this is how it works. It's not as hard as you think it is. But just kind of keeping them, you know, in the loop with things and showing them, like, for our intake this year, we're doing virtual coming out shows. It's going to be totally different. No one's ever seen it before. Everybody has to be like in their own room, but that allows our students to be creative and kind of come up with a way to present themselves to the campus virtually. But like I said, a lot of the graduate chapters are older, so they don't really agree with it because it's not what they're used to. But I know we've had meetings with our advisors. Recently, we did one-on-ones with each organization, Greek advisor, to kind of see what things they needed for intake or how they felt about it, you know, what the nationals are saying. I don't know for like, I'll just say Delta Sigma Theta, everything has to be virtual. They have a whole entire like virtual plan. So it was easy because their national says it. You know, the struggle is some nationals say, hey, your initiation has to be in person, but the university says it doesn't. So that's what we kind of up against now, is how to make that work. So those are the kind of the things that we're dealing with.
Delta Sigma Theta just reached out to our campus for expansion. So this is like timely and helpful because I'm like, I obviously need more information about how the chapter would work. So thank you.
Yeah, their organization is really, really organized. Like they're really strict on them. They typically have plans ahead of time. Like they go through different trainings in them. So working with them is always kind of easy. Some organizations are a little bit more difficult because they're kind of like, oh, do whatever you want to do. But they're really structured when it comes to things, and they typically have it together. They make it easier on us.
Okay, that's good. Well, because I've never, I guess, been in this position and had an expansion process. Like I went through that as a collegiate. And so they sent me like advisor forms and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do with these yet. So I'm like learning as we go. So any tips, tricks, they're welcome.
Yeah, for at San Diego State, we have 4 active NPHC chapters, but I'm also having 3 expand and 1 reactivate next semester. So our students definitely want to have all Divine Nine, and that's also one of my goals as well, being an alumnus of Cal State Long Beach who has a full yard. So we're really working with our graduate chapters on that end, but it appears that they're really looking for additional guidance from their international, national, or corporate offices for that. But I do have to kind of piggyback off of what William expressed, is that our NPHC organizations and their intake processes are very organized. I have access to like the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated system, et cetera. And so you'll find that they'll come with a full plan that has to be approved prior from their corporate office before it even lands on your desk. And so I think that they're one of the more easier intake experiences that I've experienced as an advisor.
So maybe okay. So I guess my questions are, when do they get their stuff ready first, and then maybe this is a different like expansion conversation, but so is it like a collegiate chapter? They're obviously looking to do that, but they work with graduate and alumni first to kind of get that all situated, right? Is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, so it's like the collegiate undergraduate chapter is typically who it's for, but the nationals will come up with the plan on their own and submit it down to the graduate and collegiate chapters. A lot of time the graduate chapters are just really there for support. Mainly, some people you have to report sometime to the graduate chapter because it makes it easier with the chain of command, but they're really just there for support. But the organization typically comes up with their own plan and they submit it down to everybody, and everyone has to follow that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other pressing questions on everyone's mind? I'm really enjoying having the input from people from all over the country right now and hearing how things are working at all of your campuses.
I'd like to add, so our Greek life is very small and they haven't had a lot of structure and organization, so that causes some issues as well. But just I feel like the pandemic and the restrictions, even though they are able to do some stuff in person here, at least, the pandemic and the restrictions has got a lot of them feeling kind of discouraged, and they're unsure of what they can and can't do, and they're not really motivated to think outside the box and come up with alternatives or ways to adapt. So I'm wondering if anyone has some insight into how to inspire or motivate our current Greeks to make sure that they are staying active and they are finding ways to adapt and engage their members in the current situation.
We're having the same issue, Evan. We're about a 10,000 campus, and our Greek life is a small portion of that. We have 17 groups, but that includes our 3 councils. So it's not the biggest portion, but I think a lot of our groups are also they're just stuck on what they can't do. So I too would love to hear what has made successful in a virtual setting, I guess.
I think one of the biggest things that I noticed on my campus, like I have around 100 fraternity and sorority life members, so super small community. My more successful chapters have the most motivation, like they want to overcome the they want to overcome the obstacles and challenges that they're facing. Whereas like my smaller organizations, like I have an organization that has 2 members because so many people have transferred out of the institution. And they're just like, I give up. But I think like one of my organizations is at 25 members and is looking to take an intake for another 10 for the spring. And it's just the motivation of the members is really, and what is kind of pushing them to be so successful. Whereas the other organizations are just like, they're stuck on the can't.
Would you say that's a newer organization or well established, older?
All of my organizations are relatively new, probably within the past like 10 years.
You said that some were feeling successful and some were not, but everybody was new relatively.
Yeah, I have about three of my chapters. 2 of my chapters are from the 70s. One of those chapters they're focused on brotherhood. So that motivation is continuous throughout the past couple of semesters. Whereas the other chapter that's in the 70s, that's the one that has 2 that are just like, I can't do it. And surprisingly, those are my IFC organizations. A lot of my other organizations have been established probably, I want to say around like 2010, 2005 area. They're all Napa based. So the one that's around 25 members is a Napa organization, and they're just like going all force with it. So it's a little bit interesting to see the dynamics work out.
I know with us, it's been a it's been a struggle because they're not used to doing things virtually, and then being online all day, and then trying to do virtual programming in the evening. They don't really want to do it. But I think I'm at Norfolk State, so we're at HBCU, so we typically have the Divine Nine on campus, and then we have the CIO, which is our Council of Independent Organizations. And with those, we have like Persian Rifles, Persian Angels, Phi Phi Alpha, Kappa Kappa Psi Psi Beta Sigma. So they kind of still have their own little umbrella that they fall under. But a lot of our organizations are living off a name. So coming in, people know like I want to be a part of it already. So that's what's kind of keeping them afloat when it comes to like recruitment and things going on campus. They're just they're going off the name. So that's what's kind of keeping them afloat. But I feel like if we didn't have it, it may dwindle away. But a lot of our organizations, like we have some organizations on campus who have no members right now due to COVID, or they haven't had intake in the last 2 to 3 years with other stuff going on. So we're kind of struggling with our group life, trying to build it up. So this is kind of a building point. So everyone is looking like everyone will be having an intake, I think, except for 2 organizations right now. So hopefully we can build our Greek community.
On that, I have a question. If there isn't anyone else that had a thought on that, as William mentioned, just hoping to build the communities. I'm curious what everyone's relationship is with their orientation office or admissions, in the sense that I've heard a lot of universities, so orientation is under our office as well, student leadership and development. But like, since Greek life isn't necessarily huge on our campus, like we don't get a list of like incoming, we could find a list of incoming students and whatnot, but we don't send something out to incoming students specifically, like, here's Greek life. Like, we have our showcase, but I didn't know if there were other, how heavily involved And does it depend on how big your Greek community is on campus for you to send something out to incoming students during orientation specifically about Greek life?
I can talk on that. We're pretty involved in our orientation at our campus. Normally in person we give workshops during orientation, but this summer all of our orientation was on Engage, so we did Greek workshops every Wednesday, I think for like 8 weeks straight. So that was really great. And then also in person we have, it's called Gator Fest, so it's like our welcome days, and the Greeks get I think 2 days of events. So they have not virtual, they have a Greek block party where they rent like inflatables and there's food and they table and they wear their letters and DJs, all that fun stuff. So we did that in a virtual capacity minus all of the fun stuff. We did like videos and had all the students there. We had a really big turnout for that. But yeah, we're pretty heavily involved in orientation, and the Greeks have a bigger presence than they have in the past few years, partially because the orientation office is got a new director, and our departments are really close to each other right now. So I think that's what's been helping, because we're in student activities and events. But yeah, we have a really great presence. I don't know, like like how you said at your campus you don't have, I mean, it could be bigger for us too, but I think building those relationships with the orientation department has definitely helped us over the years.
Yeah,
would
for instance.
definitely- Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. I would definitely echo Gabby. I actually, like, that's part of my job description is to assist with orientation. So I try to incorporate my fraternity and sorority life groups as much as I can. If we were in person, I would honestly say a lot of our orientation leaders are from Greek life, which is amazing. That helped our numbers grow significantly this past academic year prior to COVID. Turning virtually, we kind of did a very similar situation of just like offering Zooms to connect with different chapters. Each chapter has their own pro Zoom account, so they're able to host an hour-long or even, longer duration of a meeting to just showcase their information and who they are. But we also have like a 2 weeks called Week of Welcome at each semester. So we typically do like an FSL barbecue or something like that. This year we're actually incorporating like a fraternity open house and then a sorority open house, where it's just those organizations who identify within that, for people to come in over Zoom with breakout rooms and stuff. So that's going to be something new that we're trying. And we're incorporating that into our orientation, since that's about two weeks for the semester.
So let me ask a follow-up question. How, like, our orientations themselves were forced to be shrunk in size. And so the only presentation that I got as the coordinator for all student organizations and fraternity sorority life was 10 minutes. So I was like, okay, and then that was just to go over Warrior Hub, which is our Engage platform. And then we had Campus Showcase, which which has the student organizations, fraternities, sororities, et cetera, and the incoming students, they come in and they check it out. What we were noticing though is that students weren't scrolling all the way down to the bottom. So they were literally just looking at like the first half of the alphabet. Okay, cool. Thank you.
What I was going to share is I think I definitely see the benefit of it in hindsight a little bit more than at the moment. But on our campus, our student orientation program was obviously fully virtual, and they needed some staff assistance. So I was we'll use that phrase, shared with our SOAR team. And it actually was really great for me because, kind of like Julie said, like we had like a 5-minute presentation to explain everything that student life and development and ASI does. But I was able to like introduce myself as the coordinator for fraternity and sorority life, and then I made a really quick interest form on Qualtrics. Qualtrics and I are best friends. That was just like, are you interested? Do you know what council? If not, that's fine. Do you know what chapter? If not, that's fine. And then just some contact information. And I would just drop that link in our chat Zoom during my little presentation. And since I was considered part of our orientation staff, I was on anyway the whole time. So if people had questions. So I would say anybody who is interested in getting involved with getting FSL or any program you run out onto orientation is to kind of like offer yourself to them. Because I think especially when it comes to staff and we're on Zoom, they want as many co-hosts as they can get to help moderate the chat or answer questions or give tech support or accessibility support. So I think for me, that was definitely, while it was a stressful few months leading up to a fully structured virtual Panhellenic recruitment, it was definitely a benefit in hindsight to see like how to get involved and how to share that involvement with students.
I actually had another question that's off topic from this. So I came into this position in June. Well, technically March, but like I got my real paycheck in June. Which wasn't much of a difference. But we had a really big, I think my first week working, like everything hit the fan. We had a lot of sexual assault cases come through on social media and petitions to shut down Greek life and X, Y, and Z. So my number one goal this whole time in my position has been revamping our sexual education prevention. So I wanted to know if any of you we usually do Greek Summit in person and we bring outside speakers to do our Title IX training, but I'm struggling to find something virtual capacity. So if any of you use like third-party online sources to track them during their progress, I'd love to know. But yeah, that's just what do you all do? Because I appreciate any support or answer.
You said for sexual assault training?
Yeah, all around Title IX.
Oh, we've used a program called Not Anymore before. I'm not sure if anyone's ever used it. It's called Not Anymore. That's a really good program with sexual assault training, and it makes them take a test. You can kind of see who took it, what they got on it. And all students are required to do it. I think like once a year they have to go through it. But that's a really good program that we've used before.
I'll also, oh, go ahead. Okay. I'll also use, our institution uses Everfi for Title IX training. And our student leaders are always required to complete that every semester. This past year, we actually, I'm not sure if they have Title IX, but Safe Prevent Zone has hazing prevention modules, which are awesome, and they're great. So I would say those two.
Yeah, I would echo Paul's statement as well. So our campus, Stony Brook University on Long Island, New York, we utilize a live text like Prevent Zone and Hazing Prevention 101. And that's something that our new members complete within the first week of their new member process, and that our active fraternity and sorority members will renew that course annually. That's something that we've had some really great success with on our campus.
Gabby, we at San Diego State, I'm very fortunate in that we have a really great connection with our Wellbeing Health Promotions office, and the director of Wellbeing Health Promotions has been in the office since she was a grad on campus, and she created the two different kind of like programs. One's called Frat Manners and the other is called Sister. And they're peer-led or peer education programs that are, she was able to write a proposal that counts these courses for credit. So Frat Manners is 3 units, Sister is 4 units, and it counts for general education for our students. And so Frat Manners stands for Fraternity Men Against Negative Environments and Ending Rape Culture, ending rape situations. And then Sister stands for Sororities Invested in Survivor Support, Training, and Ending Rape Culture. And these entities are taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and these students are their first semester in the course is called trainees, and that's the 3 to 4 unit course, and that's where they really learn about Title IX components and talk about consent and healthy relationships. And then they're able to, after they graduate from that course, they're able to enroll in a 1 unit course, which is for actives within the organization. And that's when they're trained on how to become peer-led facilitators. And these students are really involved on campus. They put on a bunch of events like Every Kiss Begins with Consent, Spike Balls Not Drinks. There's a bunch of other events that they put on campus. Talk a lot about healthy sexual relationships, pass out lots of condoms on campus, etc. They also lead a lot of peer-led conversations. So they're part of our new member education symposiums. And they also have developed additional education for other areas. So like for our athletes, they've created this other curriculum called Athleticate, and how to have appropriate healthy relationships with them. So if you want to be connected to our Wellbeing and Health Promotions Director, I could definitely connect you to Stephanie. She's amazing. And our students tell Stephanie a lot of what's going on campus. And so it really helps with kind of addressing potential issues early on.
Yes, I know all about your frat manners and sisters. I'm such a fan. Like, I screenshotted it, sent it to my boss because I want that at our campus. So I'm trying to work it in, but I'd love to be connected and talk more. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that would be neat. I put a question in the chat. It sounds like there's a lot of peer-led involvement, which I think, of course, they sometimes, they'd rather hear from their peers instead of from us. So I'm curious. You can put in the chat how many other universities do that or other programs that have been successful.
And I know we are coming up on the final 10 minutes of our time. I don't mind staying a little later, but just letting everybody know. I want people to eat their lunch or do what they need to do for themselves.
Matt, how many peer-led programs do you have?
That's it, actually, on our campus. So they're the only ones that are specific to fraternity and sorority life. We did have Gamma back in the day, which is like address like alcohol misuse, but that kind of fizzled out as before my time on campus because they kind of shifted their focus and it was kind of antithetical to what the purpose of the organization. But I'm hoping to get either bring Gamma back or have some like hazing prevention led programs, but I don't even know if anybody has anything like that on their campus that they'd be able to share about.
Awesome, thank you.
I just have one, I guess, a question. On your campus, do you all have certain requirements for those interested in joining group-led organizations that have to like go through your office, or is it kind of open to anyone who wants to join?
It's kind of open season for us, and that's why I was really interested in your discussion earlier. I think we're trying to get a better hold on just a funnel system, or like how we can help support and encourage people to join fraternal organizations. So I was really interested in how you did that. Yeah, it's kind of open season.
I really wish we could do an academic requirement. In my past institutions, we have had a GPA requirement. And I think that, in honesty, I think it's more transparent because all of our organizations have an academic or GPA requirement for the most part. So telling a student that they should be like, it seems like false hope to me, but the glory of the Cal State system is that I'm not allowed to do that. But I would say that I wish we could do a GPA requirement. I have also in the past done a conduct check to make sure like that they're in good standing with the university. But for us, the only thing is that pre-education program, letting them know kind of the parameters like that we discussed earlier.
I'm like, for us, it's tough because we require you to have a 2.5 GPA cumulative, and then you have to have a 2.5 the semester before. No incompletes in your transcript, no judicial sanction, so that kind of pushes a lot of people away. And now that we are in COVID, we're doing the provost is allowing a pass-fail option for students who are not really good with virtual learning. So with the pass-fail option, you have to have all P's, no P minus, no NP, so it kind of like cuts you out. But with the pass-fail, you have the option to pick which classes you wanted to go for. So I guess our struggle is going to be our sophomores who first semester GPA last year, they would have had like a GPA. And then in the spring, they went home for COVID, so they used pass-fail. Everyone had pass-fail in the spring, and then they had pass-fail again. So it's kind of difficult for us because they really may not have a GPA, a cumulative GPA, so it's kind of like hard to kind of select them. But our requirements are pretty tough, and I feel like we kind of struggle with that here. But since I've been working here for the last 3 years, it's better than it was when I was a student, because when I was a student, it was a struggle with people trying to be able to join group letter organizations. But I just want to see if everybody else had like strict requirements on joining orgs.
I actually do. So you are required to have a 2.5 cumulative GPA and a semester GPA. You have to meet with me as a class or line or new member class, I guess. Prior to intake, you have to fill out like 17 different packets that was imposed on me by my supervisor. And then you also have to go to, I changed it up a little bit, but we did a Fraternity and Sorority Life 101. I think someone mentioned that, which has been so helpful this past semester. That really just condensed a lot of information. So it is a lot, but it's
Yeah, 17 packets is a lot. And I've even met with people before, and they have to take you have to take an actual class before you can do intake, which is like you sign up for a semester class, and I was like a whole entire semester. So I thought that was very different, that you have to like register for a class, kind of like FSL 101, but it's a semester-long class, which I thought was interesting.
Kevin, can you remind me what campus you work at?
Stony Brook University on Long Island.
Yeah, the 2.5 cum and the 12 actual college units is very much what I'm used to from working at smaller private liberal arts universities. And so I was trying to remember where you had said you work. It's something I miss, I won't lie.
No, it's definitely helpful. I mean, we are, for the most part, we're a deferred recruitment campus, so it just works with our campus population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. As I said, this was really great for me to get to hear from people outside of our California bubble. We do Cal State calls, we do UC Cal State calls, but getting to hear that people have students on their campuses was mind-altering to me.
Well, thanks for leading this, Monica. You have my notes if you need anything.
Yes, you're the best, Matt. Thank you.
As always, always nice to see you.
You as well. Yeah, if anyone has final questions or anything they need, the recording will be available from Adam at the end of the day, I believe.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
You too.